Hello, everybody. I am Kyle Attl, and again, we are here at the Blast Motion Podcast. Today, our guest is Ryan Johansen, owner of Johansen Baseball out in Chicago, Illinois. He has also spent some time in the Chicago White Sox organization as the assistant hitting coordinator. Very versed and kind of on the front end of technology in the space here. He's going to join us and talk a lot about what he does. Tune in and let's go. Ryan, welcome to the podcast. And where does this podcast find you?
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Always humbled to be a part of what you guys are doing. From there, so I'm sitting in Chicago right now. I'm in an igloo, ready to talk some hitting and some tech and go from there.
Awesome. So let's just go ahead and dive right into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of your training environment and what you have set up, some of the technologies that you use. I know you have Blast, but kind of a holistic view just so people at home can kind of visualize what you have going on over there.
Yeah. So right now, we're pretty what I call like blue collar, and that does include tech. It's kind of this blend of the Rocky kind of style hitting the meat bag, but with some Drago mixed in, right? So trying to blend the two worlds together. Our old tagline used to kind of be science and savages. My experience, you kind of alluded to it, being an early adopter of tech was, and that was a huge benefit being an early adopter, because I got to learn like one piece of it at a time. Like as new things came out, I wasn't like inundated with like, oh, you have to know ball flight data and then bat sensor data and movement screens and and like all these other things that like everybody tried to learn at one time. So it was a lot more digestible, kind of taking that in. So having a facility with force plates, with hit tracks, with Blast, with all our visual stuff that we were doing, among a variety of other technologies, and then kind of bringing it back into just kind of like our garage right now. Like we hit out of an RV garage. We have Blast. We use video delay. We've got a stalker set up for our radar for exit velocity, and like we just go to work. We hit marshmallow baseballs, and sometimes when we want to turn it on, we hit some good baseballs. But guys will typically come, and it's funny because, and I'm kind of rambling here for this question, but I think of all the kids that come and have good bat speeds, and I'm like, this is great. Like we're using Blast. Like I know you got juice, and they square up kind of that marshmallow ball, and it's a good ball. Like we're like pumped about the exit velocity, and I know they're like going to a PBR showcase or maybe a college camp, and I'm like, man, they're going to be really excited when they touch a good baseball, and they leave from that camp like, coach, I had a new PR at this camp. It's like, well, yeah, you got good baseballs. Like we knew you had the power, so it's kind of cool to be able to predict some of that stuff using Blast, and that's kind of what we're all about. Like we want to make the training environment harder than what the game's going to be. Get kids excited about performing and kind of that clubhouse environment. Everybody kind of comes in, they punch in the garage code. Like they might not know the next guy from Adam, and they're already fist bumping like, oh, hey, what's up, dude? Like introducing themselves. And it's just kind of this cool, like tight knit kind of community that we've sort of created.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the Rocky movie metaphor too, and kind of the different resources that people can have, because no matter where you're training and what your situation is, you've got different access to other things. So getting old school with it in the garage and implementing the tech too of that's pretty cool. So let's start with this. Let's get right into it. Let's say someone comes and starts hitting with you for the first time. What do you start working with on that player? What do you do with that first time? Are you making adjustments, corrections? Are you doing assessments? Like, I'm coming to you to hit for the first time. What does that look like? And then what does maybe the couple weeks after that look like?
Yeah, that's I think that's really probably what separates us the most and why people continue to come back. If you walk in the cage and it's your first session, the first thing I want to know is I want to know about you. I want to know where you come from, why you're standing in my cage, how you heard about us, what you know about us, what your expectations are. I want to be able to meet your expectations, right? And so that's the first thing I ask people, like, why are you here? What do you want to get better at? And I used to just kind of leave it more open-ended, and now I always add that with like, don't say hitting. Like that's the thing. Like, what do you want to do? Oh, hitting. Like, okay, well, tell me about your journey. Like why, and it forces kids to kind of reflect, and it's really surprising to me still. I guess I'm not as surprised anymore, but it's always shocking a little bit to see how unaware of why people are in the cage, like just because someone said, oh, you should go see a hitting coach, or maybe a parent signed them up, and they really don't know like why they're there. They just kind of want to like go through some drills and like call it a day and be spoon fed some information and walk out of the cage and like check a box. And so for our experience, like, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to make you self-reflect. We're going to hold you accountable to the things you say you want to get better at. And we're going to make you like figure it out. I always tell people, like, I'm not going to tell you how to hit, but I'll tell you what the best in the world do, kind of going back to that early adoption of technology and measuring some of the best players in the world and looking at thousands and thousands of data sets across a variety of technologies. Like, hey, there's a lot of information out here. At your level, this is what matters the most between these 2 or 3 things. So I'm going to tell you that's good. And then you're going to figure out how to get there. So the first session is a lot of learning about the player, seeing where they're at, and then figuring out, before I even educate them on like what is good, like figuring out what they think is good. If the first phase of, let me back up. So many times I've seen it where guys go into instruction and they just think they're just going to like talk about what they want to talk about that day. And the player is trying to do something totally opposite because they think that like if A is true, B cannot be true. So if they're trying to squish the bug and you're trying to get somebody to like pull from the center, and like you haven't had that conversation, then you need to figure out like what's important to that person. Like that's not going to work, and you're going to end up kind of frustrating each other, and you have to end up backtracking all the way. So like that's another question I'll ask people is like, okay, great. Like now I know why you're here. Like, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want your swing to look like? What do you think is good? And then once I figure that out, I can kind of build some context, and I can ask them questions to kind of guide them to that. Like, what if I told you the best hitters in the world did X? And they're like, what? No, that can't be it. And I was like, well, I have the data for it. And I don't think like, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're not doing Y. Like, I'm not telling you to not do Y, but this is kind of like where we have to get to, whether it's like a weight shift or staying back longer, path, plane, whatever. There's so many things that you can educate players on, and like, they'll figure it out. Like, they'll be like, oh, like if I just try to do that, I'm probably going to be better. And I don't have to get into mechanics and point and shoot and stand over them after every swing and try to fix stuff. Like, I can kind of give them the freedom to grow.
I love that. A couple things that I really like there is the journey base of it too. Making the player be involved and understanding why they're there is a huge part of it. I think a lot of times people come to me and they're like, oh, like we want to fix this, or we want to do this one thing. And then I see somebody one time, maybe twice, and then I don't see them for a while until there's like a problem. So the journey of that is really important. I love that you're engaging players too. A lot of people say the best hitting coach is yourself, because you're the one swinging the bat and you're the one thinking these thoughts and trying to hit. And the coach really helps with that journey and kind of with that environment. So I think that's a huge part of it, and making sure that you can build something early on and going from there. The other thing that I really like that you said is that, players are really smart. They know if you explain to them what they're trying to accomplish and what they're supposed to be doing and what the best do, they have a really good job of figuring it out. And like you said, the environment, making it harder than the game and kind of tailoring that training ladder towards what they can do can kind of be super beneficial in that. So love that kind of went to it too. I love to see the garage one day, man. That's got to be the dream. You got the garage code. Someone walks in, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to hit. So that'll be good to see one time. So let's dig in. I know you use Blast and you use some other techs. This is a Blast Motion podcast, so let's kind of dig into that specific tech, even though there's a lot more there too. At Blast, we have 10, 11 metrics that have gone on. What are your 2 go-tos that you kind of think about when, if someone's starting
So we look at that as like our efficiency metric. And you can be efficient and not be super explosive. And you can be super explosive and not be very efficient. So trying to blend those two worlds together gives us an opportunity to help players use their body in an effective way. And it kind of is just kind of like a checkbox for us, like, hey, are our drills actually making players more efficient? So I don't have to go through and do 3D motion capture, constantly evaluate video. It's just like, hey, your rotational acceleration is going up like a couple decimals each week, or man, we had a big jump when we figured this out and you felt something. That's kind of how we use it. We really don't talk about it a lot. It's just kind of like in the background for us to know, like, hey, this is working. Like, this is awesome.
That's a cool concept. For those of you that might be this first episode listening, rotational acceleration can kind of simply be thought as like the 0 to 60 time of your swing. If you're thinking about a sports car, how quickly and how efficiently do you get to that max speed that you have going on? So just a little plug for those that might be listening for the first time.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. I appreciate you bringing that up because I dropped the ball on that. And then the other one is connection impact. So if we're trying to basically keep our barrel parallel with our shoulders as we create side bend, catch ball out in front, some path things, you can extrapolate a lot of information from getting connected and impact, I think. And it's a really good starting point to start looking at path and plane and things of that nature. You can obviously work backwards and try to figure out, what some of the other issues are. But I think if that's kind of your end goal, like we talked about earlier, like the players kind of figure out how to move their body in order to accomplish some of those connection points. And if you can get connected at impact, I think that's another really good one. And we can get into the weeds on like, okay, why connection impact versus, early connection? Because I know a lot of people are kind of on the flip side, like let's just get it started in the right spot. The reason I like connection impact more, or I look at that first, is because I think depending on mobility and how the player self-organizes and things like that, they're going to enter the zone at different points. And I think how they enter the zone and how their body kind of solves that complex problem of hitting to get to that connection point. Like we care about contact. We care about point of contact. We care about like making the ball go forward. And yes, like we can work backwards and figure out why it's not maybe where we want it to be. But if I'm just picking two metrics, gun to my head, rotational acceleration, connection impact.
Nice. Awesome. I think one of the other things that I like that you said about those two too is like that's not something that you necessarily like explain and focus on, but it's something that you're tracking, especially on the rotation side. Having knowledge as the coach, you can show and demonstrate to a player certain drills or environments, but then look at kind of the metrics yourself to shape that. So, we always talk about you can either face the technology screen towards the player or keep it faced towards you as the coach and kind of prescribe as you see, and then sprinkle in kind of information as the player needs. So cool. Really appreciate you sharing those types of things. Are you wanting to learn more about some of the metrics you hear on this show? We've got blog posts that cover everything from evaluating batting practice data to what makes a hitter's swing elite. You can check it all out at our website at blastmotion.com/blog. Again, that is blastmotion.com/blog. Now that we know some of the metrics, I think you and I have had cool conversations on drills and training environments, and I think we kind of have the same talk and approach on that. Can you talk about maybe some of the drills that you use or the principles around them or the training environments that you kind of work with on your guys?
Yeah, definitely. So training environment wise, we do all of our warm-ups are kind of like our bat speed trainers. Okay. We're not hitting a ton of baseballs when we do that. We're just trying to get the body to be comfortable moving fast. Like we don't want guys seeing the baseball and well, we do. But in the bat speed sense, like it's our way of compromising, I guess, with the industry and a lot of times the families and the parents who come in and like just don't want to see kids taking absolute daddy hacks all the time. So it's like, hey, our bat speed stuff's our warm up. Like this is what we do. There's no baseball attached to it. You're getting your body moving. We do a lot of speed slugger work. We do a lot of like single arm med ball throws. We do a lot of like isometric work. With the crane scale. Somebody who's I think really good at this, just to give him a plug, is Billy Miller. He's got a book called Swing Fast, Bill Miller. If you guys are listening and are looking for a resource on that, give him a shout out. And then we move into our what I call like our blending drills. And every blending drill that we do, we incorporate stop swings. So, or what I call stop swings. Some people call them 3/4 swings. Some people call them half swings, whatever they are. My definition of it And as I was kind of looking through some videos to potentially share on this and send to you ahead of time, I realized that like players are going to do them differently, and their point of contact is going to be different. But really what we're trying to do is take your normal swing, whatever it is, and then stop basically as before your hand would roll over. So if that is here for you, if that's here for you, if that's here for you, basically stopping before your hand would potentially roll. And what that does, and then we're going to like kind of freeze frame. So that's a freeze frame drill is a drill that people have done since the beginning of baseball, like stay balanced, but we're doing it in a way that allows us to check our posture. We're doing it in a way that allows us to evaluate point of contact. We're really trying to make sure that we're beating the ball to the spot, and it's really practicing deceleration. So all the things, and from a blast perspective, that drill alone, like I tell people all the time, like if I could never do another drill, like stop swings would be the drill from there. That's how we build it out. And then from there we do all our drills. Then we do a couple rounds of like really high intent, or what we call daddy hacks in our cage. Typically 2 rounds of 8. And then we come back. What I say is we come back down to earth and we play like a simulated game. So I'm going to tell people, like, I'm going to call them out. I'm going to do fastball, curveball. We've got 2 hack attacks right next to each other, and I'm going to try to get people out with the hack attack, and I'm going to put pressure on them. I'm going to call out counts, and I'm going to make it situational. Hey, there's a ghost runner on second, and kind of the poor man's hit track, so to speak. From there, but we're going to make it competitive, and that's how we're going to end the day. So we kind of sprinkle in a little bit of everything. We feel like it covers a lot of the motor learning principles, and ecological dynamics and things like that. You can get fancy with it, but I know it's not the goal of this podcast necessarily. But basically having the player self-organize and stop swings, 3/4 swings, half swings, just making sure that you're stopping and holding before your hand starts to roll. And everybody's mobility is going to be different. A lot of it depends on, your back shoulder mobility and the ability to cross your chest. There's all kinds of things that go into it. But if you just tell a player to, like, it's very simply stop and point your barrel towards center field, and you're going to start to see, like, and then hit the ball there, like hit the ball in the air to center field while doing that, you're going to start to see a lot of different things. Because if they push the barrel, it's going to be really hard to get the ball in the air. And if they swing it, they're going to start to feel it and go from there. So I think I kind of rambled on that. I don't really love the way I explained that, so I apologize. But
no,
like that's it, man. Like, just try to make contact and like stay over the plate. Like that's the stop swing drill. Like that's it.
Yeah, no, I think you did a good job. The 2 main things that I really liked in that was, one, it was progressive. You made sure that the body was warmed up. You talked about building speed, being able to rotate the bat around the body and kind of getting the body ready to move. I think that's really important too. And then the other side of it too was, you're self-organizing. So the drills are allowing the players to really feel what they're trying to do and self-organize to get the best situation. And then the second part of that progression is you're competing. You're doing a warm-up. You've got some drill work to get you ready to rock, and then you're really creating it game-like. Hitting off of the tee or doing flips all day is not going to prepare you to hit a fastball and a curveball, or with a runner at second base late in the game. And that competition and that training environment can be super powerful. So that's pretty sweet that you guys have it. You really get creative with the things that you have and what you don't have to be able to get players everything that you have. Tell me, what are marshmallow baseballs? Are those just kind of like older ones where the outer part of the ball is kind of a little softer and worked out that way? Or
yeah, baseballs are really expensive now. So we just use them until they absolutely die. And the cool part about using hack attacks is they move differently. So sometimes they'll catch a lace and you'll get something with a little carry. Sometimes you'll catch a lace and get something with a little sink. Sometimes you'll get a little run, a little cut. And it's our way of not just, when people hear machine and fat, they're like, oh, great, you can hit the machine. Like, our machines and our baseballs are not your typical, like, just grooving fastballs down the middle. And then depending on our guy too, like, we're trying to make them run. We're trying to make them cut. We've got the dual machines. We're trying to play off each other and things like that. So yeah, that's what I stole that phrase from Ryan Fitzgerald. He just got picked up in the Rule 5 with the Royals. The first time I heard that was he hit a ball and crushed it and was like, that was it. What is that, a marshmallow? And I was like, I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Nice. So cool. Yeah. He was with the Red Sox, right, for a while?
He was, yeah.
I think the right guy? Yeah. He's got some serious flow. He's got some hair.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so let's wrap this last little part here. So, you work with players from all ages. You've been with the White Sox as assistant hitting coordinator. So you've been in pro ball. You've been down in the youth side, probably everything in between. What are some of the biggest takeaways you have from like a coaching standpoint? Someone that can say like, all right, I really want to work with this player. It could be my parent, it could be a coach, it could be anybody that has an athlete that they want to get better. What are some of the things that they could take away from not only the way that it's done in pro ball, but down in the amateur space too, to really target that? Let's imagine where whoever this person is has maybe like a 13-year-old, showed some talent, likes the game, really wants to work. How can they really blend like what you see in pro ball and what you see kind of in the amateur space? Some takeaways, just first things that kind of come to your head.
Well, I think what you see in the amateur space, we're in a unique time where the amateur space is kind of guiding pro ball right now in terms of how they develop, right? Like people are putting content out on social media. Guys are getting hired outside of pro ball to go into pro ball. So this kind of amateur space of learning a topic or a tool or something like that, it's kind of like infiltrating into professional baseball, where in the past it was pro ball down. So I think it's a unique time. The one thing that I think everybody and every coach anywhere should just constantly ask themselves, like, is this connection or is this correction? And if you can focus on connection over correction, you're going to be able to connect with that player a lot more. And when you do make that correction, you're going to be able to like make the impact. I think a lot of coaches give unsolicited advice. I think if you're and I know you have baseball and softball people that listen to this podcast, but I think like 15-year-old boys and 13-year-old boys are like very difficult sometimes to work with because just the nature of how their brains developed. Like we look at it sometimes like a lack of focus or a lack of interest. And it's just not necessarily the case. So like you have to meet them where they're at their individual stage of like brain development. Middle school boys who are going through puberty, there's so much testosterone flowing through their brains that it's cutting brain cells in half. Like they're literally brain dead. And so when they do stupid things or they forget like they forget a drill or you look at them and you ask them a question, like, huh? Like that's a real thing. Like that's something that's just innate in brain. Like they're not disrespecting you. They're not coachable. They're not whatever. So if you can meet the players where you're at and find unique ways to connect with them, and that slowly starts to change as you get into pro ball. The players start asking better questions. The college guys start asking better questions. The higher up you get into pro ball, it's interesting because like the questions stop, like they start to take ownership over their own swings. And then they're almost like protective. Like they don't want like, hey, don't mess with my swing. Don't mess with my swing. And so you go from this like unique, like laissez-faire kind of beep bopping around, like hoping you have somebody in your life to connect with and help you through like the ebbs and flows of the emotional train wreck that middle school is anyways, right? And then you like take into account like the culture of high achievement and like what we're trying to do in travel baseball right now. And then like the emotional stuff and stuff that anything is maybe going on at home. And like, then we prioritize like a swing mechanic over connecting with the player, or like you can't hit unless this is fixed. Like we mentioned, you mentioned a player or somebody coming into you and saying like, hey, I want to fix this. Anytime I hear that, I say, whoa, like nothing in your swing is broken. I guarantee you before I even watch you hit, like there's whatever you bring to the table in the batter's box right now. If you feel like you've got Thor's hammer in your hand, you have a chance. Like outside of anything, I don't even need to see you swing. Like if you feel like you have Thor's hammer, you have a chance. So nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing's broken. Like we might add something to your swing. We're never taking anything away. And that's in the sense of like, even like, well, what if a guy's got a huge leg kick and he's really big? Like, great. We're going to add some quietness. I'm not taking away your leg kick. I'm not taking away your hand pump. I'm not taking away anything. I might add some quietness. I might add some stillness, right? Or create some stillness. There's something I'm going to bring to the table that's going to build on your swing. We're not taking anything away or fixing it. And so I think, again, going back to that, it's kind of rambled on like the connection over correction. But if you can figure out, like, understand what a player's journey is, it's basically like, like trying to look for help, trying to do their best, and then feeling the pressures of PBR and perfect game and being the best in their travel team and hitting in a certain spot in the lineup. And parents will tell me like, we need to get better at this. I'm like, who's we? Like, why is this your journey or is this the player's journey? Like, make sure it's the player's journey first and foremost. Like, who's we? And then understanding as they grow, like you become that consultant. Like now you've built that trust, and when they're ready and their brains develop and they're there, like they're going to come back to you and be like, hey, like, what do you think about this? I was kind of feeling this, like, oh, like now you become self-aware because we've been working on it, and now like there's an opportunity to grow and engage, right? And then they get to a point where like they take full ownership if they reach that level, and they're like, whoa, like I know I got my stuff, like don't mess with me, I'll come.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love the connection over correction part. And I think it takes it all the way back to the beginning of this podcast where you talked about, you want to get to know that player. Why are you here? What do you think about? How do we go? As a coach, I think one of the best things that you can do is have players be excited to see you and excited to work with you. Early on, it might be a lot of stuff where, you've got to drive that as the coach to say, hey, like, what are you thinking? What do you want to do? What's your approach? What are you thinking about? How did that feel? Did you like that drill? And players can be kind of quiet, and there's nothing better than seeing maybe a month into working with somebody where they come in and they're the ones talking, like, oh, that's a cool, they ask you a question and you're like, hey, that's a great question. Like, what do you think? And then you share your thing, and it really becomes this like dynamic partnership where, the best athletes across the board have coaches, the best players in the game have coaches, and that's someone who they can connect with and help them along with their journey. And it's someone that they can trust. And being a coach, if you can do that with your athletes, it's going to go a lot farther for you, and it's going to kind of set them up for it. So I love that. We're going to put that one in our pocket, connection over correction, and then those two things kind of blend in. Ryan, thanks for joining us today. If people want to connect with you or learn more, what are some of the best avenues to connect with you?
A couple things. I guess Twitter is probably the best way. It's just my initial. So it's RPJ1317 is my Twitter handle. And then our website is just johansenbaseball.com. So Johansen with an E, JOHANSEN, baseball.com. Pretty simple. I think there's a contact form on there, and there's pretty easy to get a hold of. And I try to respond to as many DMs and things as possible. Really trying to just be a resource for people and share my experience. And usually when that happens, I end up learning something from whoever's reaching out to me because they've got great perspective too, or they'll share something and get a nugget. So I'm all about hearing from people. I love hearing from people.
Awesome. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Ryan Johansen on the podcast today. Check out some of our other episodes or tune in. We'll see you next time.